So when you look at those things that transpire and take place, okay, you have to put it into perspective. As far as like when I said a minute ago that they are both the same thing. They are just different vibrating or varying vibrating degrees of energy that represent or create the illusion that it represents the extreme opposites of each other, but they come from the same source, same energy. So when you look at the story of Horus and Set, it's not a God's devil story. It's not a good bad story. Because if you claim to be a highly spiritual person, when you approach it with that mentality, that's still using a religious mindset. Okay? To be a true magician, especially when you're practicing Egyptian magic, you look at all these elements as part of the puzzle that is necessary in order to work spiritual Egyptian magic. So you focus in and you hone in on the deities. For an example, Nun. Let's go to Nun real quick, because Nun is a very important deity when one wants to understand creation and the aspect of it. Nun goes on to say, Nun was the divine personification of the primordial waters of chaos. There's that word again, which preceded creation. Meaning this is before creation. This is pre what you know as creation. And I'm going to tell you what this represents. He was described. You have Nun and Nunette. Well, we're talking about Nun right now. He was described as the eldest father and maker of humankind. After creation had taken place, chaos was believed to continue to exist beyond the edges of the universe and in the netherworld, and was the place of social outcasts and demons. Okay? The mud brick enclosure walls of temples were sometimes constructed in curved courses, pan bending, which resulted in a wavy effect. This was possibly meant to imitate the waters of Nun, the temple of itself symbolizing the universe, the temple architecture. Nun was also thought to be present within the context of the temple in the form of the sacred lake. Nun could be represented as a baboon or with a frog's head, or in an entirely human form with a beard. In the latter guise, he was often depicted holding the solar bark aloft. His consort was the snake-headed goddess Nanuet. Okay, so Nun represented the primordial waters of chaos. Okay, and basically, I think I've explained this before in the past, that represents what goes on in the womb of the female. In the womb of the female, just as the sperm from the male is ejaculated, and that sperm races to get to the ovum and be fertilized and turn into human life. So it's talking about the chaos that ensues when a man ejaculates over 777,777,000 sperm cells. That's just an allegorical figure. Inside the female, only one makes it to the ovum, okay, or the ovaries. And this is what the chaotic waters of Nun really represent: the creational process before the physical creation that takes place in the water. So here you have the symbolism of chaos, the symbolism of water, which equals life, and those symbolism out of chaos was the formation of life, and out of that life was birthed what we know as the human. It's all symbolic of your evolution and how you evolved and how you came about on this planet. That's what these stories represent. So we have to start understanding the representation of what these symbols, stories, and texts are trying to say. So when one is invoking the energy and working the spiritual magic, one now has the correct mindset to activate the forces in their correct capacity to make it work for them. That's how this works. That's how, for an example, Nun would work. Okay? Let's take another deity. We'll maybe do one or two more. Obviously, there's so many of them and archetype energies that are represented in Egypt. We'd be here all day doing this. Maybe we'll continue this on our next one. Let's see if we can pull up a few more. Okay. Let's deal with the deity Khnum. Okay. brief explanation on this deity, Khnum. Khnum was an ancient deity represented as a man with the head of a ram, or an entirely ram form. The type of ram used to portray him was the earliest one to be domesticated in Egypt. Okay, the ovis longips, which had curly horns extending horizontally from the head. The ancient Egyptian for a ram was Ba, which was also the word for a concept akin to our personality, possibly those non-physical attributes which make anyone human being unique, or perhaps the moral essence of a person's motivation and movement. It may well then have been thanks to the ancient Egyptian love of plumes that Khnum came to be regarded as the Ba of the sun god Re. So this deity was represented with a ram's head while passing through the netherworld in his solar bark. Certainly the Ba of the dead appeared to be more than their Ka spirit. Connected with Khnum's capacity as a creator god was his role as patron deity. So we see Khnum deals with symbolic, ties also into the ram. Okay. This is representative of the creative instinct of man, not just man, female too. This is dealing with the creative aspect of your nature. Now, it's not meant when you read the stories of Khnum to look at that in the same light as, say, the God of the Bible, where he just poof, snapped his fingers and everything was created and appeared. That's not how the deity Khnum is depicted. He deals with procreation and creation, because that's what his name means and that's what he does. Okay? That's what you're supposed to be focused on. For an example, if you're working Egyptian magic and you want to create a new path that's unblocked and has unlimited potential, you could zone in and focus in, per se, on the deity Khnum. Okay? Then you have Anubis, and we'll finish with him, last deity. Anubis represents connecting those human beings who transcend here physically, connecting them to the netherworld, and taking them through the 9 gates to be, for lack of a better word, have the weighing of the heart ceremony, or go to the hall of judgment of the 42 judges. This is an abode that he kind of anchors and positions the soul to go through. So Anubis is another deity one can contact. Anubis is great to contact when you want to astral travel or spiritually travel, if that's the term you want to use, the spirit realm, so one can see and connect the spirit realm to the physical realm. One would access the energy of Anubis. This is, again, I mentioned this before, this is why you see people that are Christians, this whole concept of wearing black to funerals comes from the black Egyptian jackal dog of the dead, Anubis, because he deals with the transitioning of the soul of the deceased to the spiritual realm. So if one wanted to enhance their connection and communication to the spirit realm, one would work with the deity Anubis. One would work magical rituals, and obviously the color black would play a prominent role in that. Black candles, wearing some type of black garb or attire, and saying an invocation or utterance to invoke the presence of this deity that we call Anubis. Again, we can go through all of them. I'm just giving you a couple of them to see how one would work the principles of Egyptian magic. So we need not just focus on the historical aspect of Egypt. When people ask, when I constantly talk about this, people say, well, how does one update the information of back then to today? This is how one does it. Okay, not getting caught in the past, not getting caught up just in the history of Egypt. And again, I'm not saying, I just want to make this clear, I'm not saying that history isn't important. Knowledge isn't important. What I am saying is, though, if you get stuck in that history and you don't update it in real time for the now, it's just that it's useless history. That it can only be used to a certain degree. So this is how, and this is just the beginning steps, how you would work with this archetype energy, and this is some of the principles one would utilize to working some of this Egyptian magic, working invocations and summonings in the spirits. So I hope this information, as a starting point, helped in guiding some people to that path and how this works. We'll continue this discussion on our next post. We'll go through some of the other deities on our next post. It's your brother Beniti Amin Ray saying Hotep.